We'll be starting in just a moment. Just give some people a moment to get on. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Lunch Break with the Rabbi today, Wednesday, the 29th day of the month of Av, and August 19th, 2020, as we get ready for Rosh Chodesh Elul. Tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, the last day of the month of Av. On Friday, we already begin sounding the shofar in preparation for the high holidays, so the high holidays are really right around the corner. Today, what we'll be discussing is a very long, famous question known as, why does Jewish law recognize matrilineal descent in deciding factor for Jewish identity? As we know, Judaism, in contrast to many other religions, recognizes a Jewish person who is born from a Jewish mother as a Jew, or one who converts to Judaism as a Jew. In other religions, like in Muslims or Christianity, it goes by the father. Why is it that Judaism goes by the mother? Now, while this seems like an academic question, this is especially troubling to many from an emotional perspective when they either come from a mixed marriage, or in general, why does Judaism depend on the mother being Jewish? As we know that if the mother is Jewish, then the person is Jewish, no questions asked. What's interesting about this question is that in years back, going back in the time of Greek mythology and Greek philosophy, we find that they used to say that the woman you call the mother of the child is not the parent, and she's merely the nurse of the seed that was sown inside her. They didn't even view the mother as something of importance. It was the father that all that mattered. And even more so that Judaism came along, or Judaism was actually before it, but Judaism teaches us that the mother is the factor in deciding about the Jewish faith. So if we look in general, when we talk about race is a matter of descent. But when it comes to religion and faith, presumably it should not be a matter of descent. If you would believe in Judaism, you should be Jewish technically. Somebody should be able to say, I identify as a Jew, and why does not make him Jewish? In fact, the question can be asked, why is Judaism a matter of descent at all? What does it make a difference who your descendants were? If I believe in Judaism, should that be enough? If I accept the practices, shouldn't that be enough? Why does it matter what my parents did or did not do? So this takes us back to the book of Deuteronomy, as we read in the end of the book of Deuteronomy, and as we read a few weeks ago, we read every week almost, Moses continuously reminds the Jewish people about a covenant that he made with the Jewish people. A covenant that God made with the Jews when he took them out of Egypt, and then sealed and signed when he gave them the Torah. When God gave the Jewish people the Torah, Moses reminds the Jews that God gave it to them, to those that are here today, and those that are here for generations to come. God made a covenant with every single Jew until the end of days, ensuring that they'd follow the mission and follow through on the task that they were given in making this world a dwelling place for God. That means within humanity, as we discussed many times before, the Jewish people were chosen for a specific task to be able to fulfill the mission that God intended for them to do. Every human being has a mission for them to do in this world, but the Jewish people specifically were given a task. Now, those Jewish people who were descendants would continue from generations and generations of those who were standing at Mount Sinai were chosen to give that task. So how do we choose the Jewish identity? How do we know what happens if one parent is Jewish and one parent is not? How do we determine that Jewish identity? Being that God gave us that covenant, God gave us that mission, therefore we need to look to the Torah to see what that covenant entails and who is part of it. Which brings us then, why does then Judaism say that matrilineal descent goes by the mother? Now that we understand that the concept of Judaism is not just merely identifying as a Jew, but it is only for those who are part of that covenant from the time of Mount Sinai and those who, by essence, convert and accept that covenant as well. But why does it go by descent? Why by the mother? We understand why by descent, because then you're part of that obligation that was given at Mount Sinai. But why the mother? And there was different answers that were given, and we're going to touch upon a few of them, and that's what we'll look at and see the different answers. One answer that is given is a biological based rationale, being that the child is in the fetus of the mother for a majority of the time, and therefore the mother is the one that cultivates the child while in the embryo, therefore the child is considered determined Jewish because of that. Meaning it's merely biological, that the concept of the child being in the mother while cultivating its essence, so to speak, in this world is what makes the child who and determines the child's identity. It is interesting to note that this question comes up as well today when we have, whether it's infertility or when somebody uses a surrogate, who then does the child identify as? Is it at the carrier, or is it the surrogate mother, or the mother, or the beginning mother? And because of that, there's differences of opinion in Jewish law. And one of the opinions goes according to this and says, being that the child spends the 9 months in the mother's womb, that's the one that should determine the child's status in religion and descent. Then there's another explanation. Another explanation comes from a nurture-based rationale, which is the concept of that being that the mother is the one who nurtures the child, brings the child up, spends time in educating the child, therefore it should be according to the mother as well. Another explanation is given is because the identity of the child can be only measured and can only be tracked to the mother. People can born, you don't know who the father is, but the mother, you always know who it is. So it's easily and indisputable to know who it is. But ultimately what matters is because that's what the Torah told us, and that's the rationale. Why is that the ultimate reason? And we're going to go through the different reasons and look what may be problematic with some of the reasons. Well, the first reason that we've given is because the biological reason, most of it is because of the mother. This is actually found in the book of Genesis. One of the reasons why Chava, Adam's wife, was called Eve, because she was the mother of all life. Eve's name connotes the concept of motherhood. A mother is what brings a child into the home, is what brings a child into this world. There's almost no mention of the father when it talks about creation of the first child. And therefore, the concept of bringing a child into the world, of bringing a human into the world, is the mother, and therefore Judaism should be determined. However, still in all, a father does have some type of input there in order for the child to be born. So that's why this answer maybe is not 100%. The concept of a mother having more influence in a child's life, this is of course very obvious, as you see in most people's upbringings. Yes, the father may be teaching the elements, the intellectual, the rational, maybe supplying and providing. But what does a child see most is the way the mother behaves in the home, the way she sets the table for Shabbat, the way the home is kept kosher. As we know, the majority of Judaism is practiced in the home, and the one that's in charge of the home is the mother, not the father, so to speak. So therefore, the mother is the foundation of the home. She is the one that implements the values and the practices in the home, and therefore the Judaism should go by the mother. The third explanation that we mentioned, which is that the mother is the one that is traceable, the mother is indisputable, the one that who's the mother is something which you can never deny. That, in fact, is what the primary reason that we find in most classic sources. And most of them we find that matrilineal lineage is something which is definite. It is for that reason that you'll notice that when we make a blessing for somebody who's not well, or anytime we make a blessing for somebody who is alive, we will always say their name and their mother's name. While when somebody passes on, we then say their name and their father's name. And the reason is because we know that something which is indisputable, when we're asking God for a blessing and a prayer for somebody that needs help, we want to make sure it's indisputable we got the right address. Number two is also a nice explanation as well, as we want to mention the mother. There's nothing like a Yiddish mama who is going to beg and pray on behalf of their child. But more so, it's we want to be 100% sure. Once a person passes on, even if majority of the opinion agree that this guy is the father, we'll take that too. It doesn't matter if it's not 100% or not. Interesting to note another thing as well is when it comes to tribes we go by the father, while identity we go by the mother. And the reason is because according to Jewish law, the tribe, for example, an Israelite woman who married a Kohen becomes then a Kohen. So her identity doesn't stay with her because it goes independent who she marries. And the reason for that is because when it comes to identity, Judaism is an identity, so it goes by the mother, while tribe is merely a task of what that individual has to do, and identity goes by the core essence of something which is indisputable, while tasks, you can go by the one who's trained you to be able to follow those tasks, and that can be the father as well. But the bottom line is that all of these explanations are irrelevant. And the only relevant part is because the Torah tells us, and the Torah identifies what that connection and solidifies that relationship that we have with God. And the Torah tells us that the way we have our relationship with God is by descent of the mother, matrilineal descent. But Kabbalah and Hasidism gives us another interpretation, which is, Kabbalah explains that, as you know, that in Judaism, a mother does not have the same obligations as a father. The mother has less obligations, as we know, Judaism teaches us that laws that pertain to a specific amount of time have limited obligations because of their obligation in time. However, when it comes to a father, it comes to the man in the home, they have to do many more obligations than the woman. Kabbalah and Hasidism explains, and that is because the woman has more of an essence, a relationship with God. Therefore, they don't need those extra commandments. When it comes to identifying the child and identifying the relationship that a child has, and especially from a religious perspective, who would we identify it? By somebody who has an inherent closer relationship to God, or someone that needs to add in activities to create a relationship with God? And therefore, when it comes to the identity of the child, we go by the mother, is because the mother inherently is connected without those extra commandments. This Judaism teaches us is the importance of our responsibilities of following the commandments. Every single Jew by nature has a relationship with God. The mitzvahs and commandments that God gives us is merely there as tools to enhance our relationship. We, by very virtue of being born to Judaism or accepting upon ourselves through conversion, create and cultivate and have that connection. It is only waiting for us to develop and cultivate and motivate us to not only become better people, make this world a better place. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them and we'll be able to discuss them in future classes. Looking forward to hearing from you, and see you tomorrow as we discuss ethics of our fathers on Thursdays at 1 p.m. God bless you and have a great day.